On our agenda today is the 2008 interim financial statements for the eight-month period ending February 29, 2008 for the City Redevelopment Agency. And would someone of you folks please explain what the Redevelopment Agency is in 3 or 4 words or less? And
3 or 4 words. I can't do that, but I can try my best. The Redevelopment Agency are agencies throughout the state of California which take a project area, a defined project area, and when they're established, the property tax base at that time is frozen, and every tax dollar above that, property tax dollar above that, from that point on for a period of up to 40 years, is returned back to the Redevelopment Agency. The Redevelopment Agency is then charged with fighting blight and those things that lead to blight. So what that money is taken from the property tax, put over into the Redevelopment Agency, and must be spent within that project area to fight blight and the things that lead to blight. I should also mention that 80% of that goes towards the blight effort. 20% of that is immediately put into affordable housing programs. And with this city and council's leadership in the past, much more than 20% has been put towards the affordable housing effort. So that, in about 80 words, is what the Redevelopment Agency does in a nutshell.
What would you say is the boundary of the RDA, and then could you describe a few of the major projects that we've done?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The boundaries, it's an approximately 850-acre area that is bounded on the top by Victoria Street, north, I should say, on the west by the 101 down to Castillo. From Castillo at the 101, it drops down to Cabrillo and takes in the harbor and waterfront area and runs along over to Milpa Street, up Milpa Street to the 101. So that would be the east now. And back along the 101 to Santa Barbara Street and then back up to Victoria. Some of the major projects in the past, just to let the folks out in the public know, Paseo Nuevo Mall was a Redevelopment Agency funded project. The restoration of the train depot, Chase Palm Park, current projects that the State Street sidewalks, the refurbishment of those. Other things we have right now going on are grants to the Granada Theater for the recent completion of the Granada Theater. We also have the East Cabrillo Sidewalk Improvement Project, which is starting actually next week, which will improve the sidewalks essentially from Stearns Wharf over to Milpa Street. We're also working on the West Beach Pedestrian Improvement Project and a whole host of other things, approximately 22 capital projects in total at this point.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much, Brian. So our purpose here today is to see if the Finance Committee has any questions concerning the report, which we've had for a few days. I have just 1 or 2, and let me start with the committee members here. Ms. Schneider.
Thank you. On page 4, if you can just go over the Thompson Avenue improvements. I see the entire $200,000 budget's under encumbrances, and I don't think we've done anything yet, but what's the status of that?
Councilmember Schneider, before we actually answer the question, seeing
Sure.
that this is the first publicized meeting where we've actually going over one of the interim financial statements for the RDA, I just kind of wanted to lay out the format, if you wouldn't mind. We do present these statements to council every single month, and they are presented. They usually go to council on the consent agenda, and we bring those to Finance Committee for the Finance Committee members to ask questions about what's happening in here. And in these interim statements, we have statements for the general fund and when we talk about the general fund, we're not talking about the city's general fund. It's the RDA's general fund. We have statement for the housing fund. We have statement for the bond fund and the capital projects funds. And so as we go through these things here, we'll be each one of these statements, like for instance, we are referring to page 4. This is related to the RDA Bonds Fund Series 2001A. And so we just keep in mind as we're going and looking through this that the public may want to know which fund it is. And so we'll just go there. And Brian Bossy, who's actually the the head guy over there. No, he's what is your
The acting redevelopment agency manager, right?
manager over there. Brian will be answering most of
director.
the questions that we have today on this part here.
Great. Thank you for that explanation.
Thanks, Rudy. Thompson Avenue. You see $200,000 here because that is what has been appropriated to the project. It's part of a cost-sharing agreement with the folks at Brooks who occupy the Lions building. And as part of their improvements to the building, they were also required, per the Planning Commission, to improve the street frontage on Thompson Avenue. So we paired up with them, and the board appropriated $200,000 towards that effort. So you won't see any of this gone. They have a few milestones to meet before that money can be released.
Brooks has a few milestones to meet.
That's correct.
Okay.
With their improvements, and as you can see, if you go out to Thompson Avenue, they're well on their way. The rains back in February delayed it a considerable amount, but they should be done towards the end of this month, and then soon thereafter you should see the drawdowns of that completely.
So
Most
the
likely.
end product, the alleyway or that avenue piece will just look nicer going from the back of Cost Plus, in between Cost Plus and the Brooks building over towards lot 10.
10, that's
Right?
correct.
Okay.
It'll make it more of a
Right.
pedestrian feel and clean that area up.
Thank you.
Ms. Falcone, any questions?
Well, to go back to what you were inquiring regarding the RDA, and you said that there was 20% of the money that's been collected. Now this is over a 30-year period. Has been spent on affordable housing, which has yielded in the city of Santa Barbara approximately 12 or 13%. Is that accurate?
I believe it is. It might even be a little higher than that. I've heard it approaching upwards of 15%. So it's a significant amount.
That's really remarkable, and that means that 15% or thereabouts of the entire housing stock in the city of Santa Barbara has been built with RDA money and is available to low and moderate income households.
That's a correct statement. It's a significant amount of millions and millions of dollars over the years.
So this is really good work, and I can tell you with some certainty as one of the directors for the League of California Cities that not every city does this in California. In fact, we are among the very, very rare that do it in the state of California or anywhere else for that matter. So since we're just bringing people up to speed on what the RDA has done, it does a lot more than build capital projects. It builds, a lot of affordable homes for folks. And unfortunately, we're going to lose the RDA in the next 6 years, 7 years. So we need to make good use of the money as it remains. Thank you for that. I see here on the last page, page 5, is a long list of many of the capital projects that the RDA is either has funded currently or is about to fund over the next several years. And one of the projects that you mentioned is the West Beach improvement with the sidewalks and the plantings and the connectivity and all of that. I gave a presentation that you helped me with, Mr. Bossi, yesterday, along with your assistant, Jeanette Kendo, and we had about 60 people or so in the room and gave them an overview of this. And one of the questions that was asked was, because this money for this project was set aside a number of years ago, is it still within budget? And have we made any incremental CPI sorts of adjustments to the set-aside money? And maybe you could explain that a little bit, because I know we got a short answer of, no, we're still in budget, but maybe you could go into that just a little bit as to why we think that the money we have set aside is going to be sufficient.
Sure, I'd be happy to. When RDA staff, with the assistance of Public Works staff, develop a cost budget for a particular project, we know that it has to go through the city's process, and it's not going to be built in a couple of weeks or months. It takes quite a bit of time. So what we generally do is include a few years of, based on the complexity of the project, a few years of increase in that. It's generally above the CPI index. just to be safe. We generally don't know the true cost of the project until it goes out to bid and we receive those bids. A few years back when the construction market was very hot and a lot of projects were coming in over budget, that process didn't quite work out, but as a general rule it has, and we designed to those budgets. Lately, construction prices have been coming down considerably, as you'll see in the next few weeks with some of our construction contracts moving forward, including the fire station.
Fire station number one, which is the
one.
downtown station.
Those costs have come down considerably, so it's a good time to be out there building. But we do try and include future dollars into these projects. For this particular project, there was an additional $1.25 million appropriated by the agency board a few years ago, knowing that the original money that was set aside was just an earmark, and so we've added to that. At the current time, we have budgeted. The project is budgeted at the current amount. Again, as time goes on, we'll see if that proves to be acceptable. We're hoping it is, and that's what we gear all our projects towards, is that original construction
Well, I
amount.
guess we better break ground on that project pretty soon, then, huh?
That'd
Well,
be
thank
nice.
you. I appreciate that, because the RDA does have this forward-looking policy of building in the multi-year process that we know we're going to encounter because it's our process. So thank you for that explanation. We do that with all our capital projects within the RDA.
That is correct. And obviously, things do change, and so there are times when that money needs to be increased, but we try to keep everything the
Great.
best we can within that budget.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Brian, just one quick question back on page 4 under capital outlay finished. I'm looking at the annual budget, the Granada Garage Mitigation Fund. You with me there? Page 4. Yep. Okay, now I recall from those discussions that the mitigation for the garage was a major effort, and I think in terms of alternate transportation and the whole thing. So I'm forgetting what this particular small budget is. Do you remember what that is, or if not, can you get back to me on that?
Yes, I can do both, actually. The dollar amount was at one point actually significantly higher than that, but it's been drawn down as certain measures are paid for. I can look into that with a little bit more detail, but that's basically what's remaining out of that entire Granada
Okay,
Garage account.
really, I guess from an accounting principle standpoint, and when I looked at that number, I thought that number, the budget number, should be much higher. So is there some sort of an adjustment going on that I don't really quite understand here?
Are you talking about the MyRide alternate transportation? Isn't that the downtown parking fund, not
Yes.
RDA?
And that's what I was
That's why that's what that
going to
number is.
mention, that
Okay.
a significant portion of that is actually within the city in the downtown parking fund.
Yeah, and so this mitigation here then is something different, right?
Right. This is what's remaining in that project. It's just it's a piece of that mitigation fund. There was if I recall, there were just some ancillary things that were left over to do on that.
Okay, well,
So
just somebody let me
Yeah.
know what that is.
Sure.
That's fine. Okay, any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll move it to consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Okay.
We will be talking about this on consent today. Thank you very much. That concludes our meeting.